we have Adam, the while, waiting desirous her return, had wove of choicest flowers a garland, a head garland, to adorn her tresses. We're back to hair again, aren't we? And her rural laborer's crown. At line 851, there he her met, scarce from the tree returning, in her hand a bough of fairest fruit, that down he smiled, and he sees it, and he knows. At line 856, Eve begins to speak to Adam. Hast thou not wondered, Adam, at my stay? She begins with a question. Thee I've missed, and thought it long deprived thy presence, agony of love till now, nor felt, nor shall be twice, for nevermore mean I to try. What rash untried I sought, the pain of absence from thy sight. I'm never going to leave your side again. But strange hath been the cause, and wonderful to hear. This tree is not, as we are told, a tree of danger tasted, nor to evil unknown, opening the way, but of divine effect, to open eyes, and make them gods who taste, and have been tasted such. The serpent wise, and immediately we think, of course, of the number of times that Othello will call him honest Iago. She says, no, the serpent is wise. He's explained it all to me. Of course, the serpent wise and honest Iago coming to mind will lead us to line 877. And she says it, that she is growing up to Godhead. My eyes have been opened. And again, we immediately think of Oedipus. The moment that he sees, of course, he's blind. At line 886, Adam knows it's over. His own self-thought. His own soliloquy. In her cheeks, distemper flushing glowed. On the other side, Adam, soon as he heard the fatal trespass done by Eve, amazed, astonished, stood and blank, while horror chill ran through his veins and all his joints relaxed. From his slack hand, all the sexual language scholars have pointed out is clearly here. The garland wreathed for Eve down dropped, and all the faded roses shed. Speechless he stood and pale, till thus at length first to himself he inward silence broke. O fairest of creation, last and best of all God's works, creature in whom excelled whatever can to sight or thought be formed, holy, divine, good, amiable, or sweet, how art thou lost? How on a sudden lost, defaced, deflowered, and now to death devote? Rather, how hast thou yielded to transgress the strict forbiddance? How to violate the sacred fruit forbidden? Some cursed fraud of enemy hath beguiled thee, yet unknown, and me with thee is ruined. For with thee certain my resolution is to die. How can I live without thee? How forego thy sweet converse, and love so dearly joined, to live again in these wild woods forlorn? Should God create another Eve, and I another rib afford, yet loss of thee would never from my heart. No, it takes us back to the no we saw earlier in the poem. I feel the link of nature draw me, flesh of flesh, bone of my bone thou art, and from thy state mine never shall be parted, bliss or woe. We are told then that Adam knows it's over, but he's going to eat the fruit nonetheless. 9:21, bold deed thou hast presumed, adventurous Eve, and peril great provoked who thus has dared. Had it been only converting to eye that sacred food, sacred to abstinence, much more to taste it, under ban to touch. But past, who can recall, or done, undone. The teleology, it is what it is. I can't undo it. Nor God omnipotent, nor fate, yet so perhaps thou shalt not die. Notice how he begins to talk himself into eating of the fruit as well. Perhaps the fact is not so heinous now, for tasted fruit profaned first by the serpent, by him first made common and unhallowed ere our taste. It's it's brilliant. 9:31, for the first time, Adam includes himself in the eating, even though he has not yet eaten of the apple. The apple will be eaten at line 999, and here it is, our taste, or yet on him found deadly. And There it is. At line 932 to 959, we're going to have finally Adam convincing himself that he will do this. Notice he says it. Yet he yet lives, the serpent, lives as thou sayest, and gains to live as man, higher degree of life, inducement strong to us, as likely tasting to attain proportional assent, which cannot be but to be gods or angels demigods, nor can I think that God, creator wise, though threatening, will in earnest so destroy us, his prime creatures. God actually won't destroy us. Dignified so high, set over all his works, which in our fall for us created, needs with us must fail, dependent made. So God shall uncreate, be frustrate. In other words, God can't undo what he's done. Do, undo, and labor lost. And labor lose, nor well conceived of God, who though his power creation would repeat, yet would be loath us to abolish, lest the adversary triumph. In other words, he says God can't let Satan, the adversary, win. Fickle their state whom God most favors. Who can please him long? Me first he ruined, now mankind. Whom will he next? Matter of scorn, not to be given the foe. However, I with thee have fixed my lot, certain to undergo like doom. If death consort with thee, death is to me as life. So forceful within my heart I feel the bond of nature draw me to my own. My own is thee. For what thou art is mine. Our state cannot be severed. We are one. One flesh. To lose thee were to lose myself. So he talks himself into doing this. At line 990, Eve will embrace him, and for joy tenderly wept. And again, we think about book 5, line 129, and the 2 tears that fell after Eve talked about the dream that she had. And here we're going to have some weeping as well. We're going to have a lot of weeping, actually, that's coming. Much one that his love, had so ennobled as of choice to incur divine displeasure for her sake, or death in recompense. For such compliance bad, such recompense best merits. The poet Milton will say it. Even though Adam eats out of love for Eve, it's still bad. It's not good. And finally, at line 999, he eats. At line 1033, we have Adam's lost song. Eve, he says, I see thou art exact of taste and elegant, of sapience no small part. And he says now he is so excited to see how Eve has changed. And then at line 1033, so said he, and forebode not glance or toy of amorous intent, well understood of Eve, whose eye darted contagious fire. Line 1037, her hand he seized, and to a shady bank, we think, of course, of her being born or created in the shade, thick overhead with verdant roof embowered, he led her, nothing loath. Flowers were the couch, were back to flowers, pansies and violets, and astral and hyacinth. We think of Hyacinth Girl, T.S. Eliot's Wasteland. There they will disport, they will play, that is to say, they will have sex, and this is a different kind of sex than prelapsarian sex. They will then sleep, and of course they will dream. Hamlet will say it, there's the rub. Of course, this dreaming for them is the problem, because ultimately when they wake up at line 1066, there is the problem. Let's begin in reading. Adam, of course, recognizes that they have done something seriously wrong. Oh, Eve, in evil hour thou didst give ear to that false worm, of whomsoever taught to counterfeit man's voice, true in our fall, false in our promised rising. Since our eyes opened, we find indeed, and find we know both good and evil, good lost, evil got, bad fruit of knowledge, if this be to know, which leaves us naked thus of honor void, all the different nakeds, of honor, of innocence, of faith, of purity, our wanton ornaments now soiled and stained, and in our faces evident the signs of foul concupiscence, lust. whence evils store, even shame the last of evils of the first be sure then. How shall I behold the face henceforth of God or angel? It's interesting that Adam for the first time thinks about, how am I going to look God in the face? Henceforth of God or angel, erst with joy and rapture so oft beheld, those heavenly shapes will dazzle now this earthly with their blaze insufferable bright. Oh, might I here in solitude live, savage in some glade obscure, where highest words impregnable to star or sunlight spread their umbrage broad, and brown as evening. Cover me, ye pines, ye cedars, hide me, I may never see them more. It is significant at line 1097. Shame, newcomer, shame is now for us. The point we want to make here is significant. Adam, after eating of the forbidden fruit and having sex with Eve, that's the most amazing sex that he's yet had, but then he goes to sleep and has bad dreams, and when he wakes up, notice already he's ready to say it, we're jacked. We're jacked. And he says it, I'm never going to be able to look God in the face again, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to live solitary, alone. Note the irony. The reason he asked for Eve in the first place is that he didn't want to be alone. He said, God, you can be alone, but I can't be alone. Of course, now the question is, how will we hide our shame? There's an interesting set of lines at 11:16. How unlike to that first naked glory, such of late Columbus found the American so girt with feathered cincture. Naked else and wild among the trees on isles and woody shores. A number of scholars have pointed out only Galileo and Columbus are mentioned as contemporaries of Milton in this entire poem. Also, let's point out, this may be an observation. There was a growing idea that when Columbus met the early Americans, that they were maybe like prelapsarian, and here Milton will definitely say, no, they were trying to hide their nakedness and their shame just like Adam and just like Eve. Again, going back to earlier lectures as well, you have two versions of the new world. You have that idea in Pandemonium of El Dorado, the idea that we're trying to rip gold from the earth, and then you have that landscape of the Dutch, the idea of a Protestant Eden, and all of that is now, with this one reference to Columbus, Milton is pointing out, going away. At line 1121, now to finish up, they sat down to weep. Right? Why? Well, think back to Plato's Republic. Remember the tripartite soul. You have reason, that is control of emotion and desire. What happens if desire takes over reason? Well, we're witnessing it right here, right? At line 1133, Adam, moved with touch of blame, he's not able to talk very well. At line 1133, he says it. Would thou hast hearkened to my words and stayed with me as I besought thee, when that strange desire of wandering this unhappy morn, I know not whence possessed thee. I wish you had listened to me, he says. We had then remained still happy, not as now, despoiled of all good, shamed, naked, miserable. Let none henceforth seek needless cause to approve the faith they owe. When earnestly they seek such proof, conclude they then begin to fail. In other words, he says, I wish you had listened to me. To whom? Line 1143. Soon moved with touch of blame, thus Eve. What words have passed thy lips? Adam severe. Imputest thou that to my default or will of wandering, notice the word wandering keeps getting used, as thou call'st it, which who knows but might as ill have happened, thou being by, or to thyself perhaps. In other words, if the serpent had found you, you would have done the same thing. Hast thou been there or here, the attempt? Thou couldst not have discerned fraud in the serpent, speaking as he spake. In other words, this would have happened to you. She says it. Why he should, no ground or enmity between us known, why he should mean me ill or seek to harm. Was I to have never parted from thy side? Sooner or later we were going to be apart. As good have grown there still a lifeless rib, being as I am. Why didst not thou, the head, command me absolutely not to go, going into such danger as thou say'st, too facile? Then thou didst not much gainsay, nor didst permit, approve, and fair dismiss. hadst thou been firm and fixed in thy descent, neither had I transgressed, nor thou with me. In other words, she says, hey, she interestingly will call on the patriarchy and say, you should have done your job. You're the man. You should have told me what to do. Line 1162. To whom then first incensed, Adam replies, is this the love? Is this the recompense of mine to thee, and grateful Eve, expressed immutable, when thou wert lost, not I, who might have lived, enjoyed immortal bliss, yet willingly chose rather death with thee? In other words, he says, notice the series of questions. He says, really? You're going to yell at me? But I ate the fruit so that the two of us can die together. And am I now upbraided as the cause of thy transgressing? Notice it's you, it's not me. Nor enough severe, it seems, in thy restraint. What could I more? Now, this is, of course, the language not only of Adam, it is the language of God, and, of course, it's the language of Milton. I did everything I could. I warned thee. I admonished thee, foretold the danger and the lurking enemy that lay in wait. Beyond this had been force, and force upon free will hath here no place. It's the theodictic argument of Milton. For man and woman to be created without free will, they are not really man and woman. It had to be free will, and Adam says, I had to let you go. And of course, that was the test, the trial. But confidence then bore thee on, secure either to meet no danger or to find matter of glorious trial. And perhaps I also erred in overmuch admiring what seemed in thee so perfect that I thought no evil durst attempt thee. We think of Raphael's warning in Book 8, lines 561 to 570. You better be careful because she's beautiful and you're not thinking well, right? But I rue that error now which is become my crime, and thou the accuser. Thus it shall befall him, line 1182, who to worth in woman over trusting lets her will rule. Restraint she will not brook, and left to herself, if evil thence ensure, she first his weak indulgence will accuse. This is Milton at his misogynist worst. Milton at his best, of course, in his poetry. Adam says it, I should have not listened to you. Of course, in the Genesis 3 account, and we'll get to this later, the accusation by God, the curse by God to Adam is not that he ate from the forbidden fruit, but that he listened to his wife. Wow. Never trust a woman, in other words. Thus, they, in mutual accusation, spent the fruitless hours. Notice the brilliance of the use of the word fruit and fruitless here. But neither self-condemning, in other words, nobody wants to take responsibility for actions, and of their vain contest appeared no end. It is significant that the last word of Paradise Lost, Book 9, is end. Well, this is compelling stuff. Let's now play the game of Level 2A, messages and themes really quickly, and let's at least mention 3 possible ways to think about this as messages, themes. 1, how do you, the view of this event, right? Of course, one view is St. Augustine's view. All of our woe is lost in this moment. All of our woe comes to fruition in this moment. That is to say, we read this as Eve as villainous, as the one who screws everything up. We think of Pandora in the Greek myth. Of course, a postmodern view of this, certainly beginning with somebody like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, will see Eve maybe as more heroic, always pushing against the envelope of knowledge, right? Technology and science, in other words. A second possible message theme. Think about the different falls. We have, of course, the fall that's a psychological fall, the individual. We have the fall of the sociological fall. Notice at the end of the poem, here they are, fighting back and forth, right? How about this one? Do you find this story a true love story? Eve needs Adam, and that's why she goes back after she's eaten from the forbidden fruit. Adam needs Eve, and that's why he eats of the fruit. We think, of course, of Pyramus Thisbe and Romeo and Juliet, the idea that I cannot live alone, I will die with you because of love. Do you buy it? Let's go to level 2B in the rhetorical reading here. Of course, we started with this idea of Aristotle's Poetics and Oedipus and the idea of reversal and recognition happening simultaneously in Oedipus Rex. the fall of the protagonist, the audience going through its catharsis vis-a-vis fear and pity. All of that is, of course, happening in Book 9, and I hope that you have some sense of the ways in which you kind of can appreciate how that is happening. What about the symbol of flowers? Think about that one and how compelling that is. At the moment that Adam sees Eve, he's totally turned on by her, but he's also completely destroyed and goes slack and lets the garland fall, and immediately the roses will lose their beauty. Finally, of course, think about how Shakespeare plays into our reading, and especially those soliloquies, those tragic protagonists that are always giving their comments. At level 3A, how do we relate to other texts? We've mentioned, of course, Shakespeare, the lines from Hamlet, Brutus and J.C., Romeo and Juliet, and Pyramus Thisbe come to mind, Macbeth, Lady Macbeth, Duncan. Remember Duncan, there is no art to find the mind's construction in the face. Look like the innocent flower would be the serpent under it. Othello, the play, and honesty, Iago, he will say over and over again. How about Oedipus and Oedipus Rex? The idea of he sees the moment, of course, he blinds himself at the end of that play. What for you are the best texts to show a major screw-up and then the blame game to follow instead of taking responsibility for one's own actions? And since we're there, let's jump to 3B. How do you relate this text to yourself? For example, do you read Eve here as hero or villain? Which protagonist do you most identify with here? And why? How about this one? When is the last time that you made a mistake? And why is it so natural for us to want to try and blame someone else instead of taking responsibility for our own mistakes? Okay, finally let's ask it. This is Milton's Theodicy. This explains everything in terms of the bad stuff in the world. Does it work for you? Who do you blame? Do you think that in the end Milton is blaming Eve?